What's happening, guys and girls? Acrinator here, and holy hell, it's finally happening. For as long as it took me to get here, I almost thought we'd never make it into more recent expansions. Well, we still have quite a ways to go before we catch up to modern Warcraft, but we're definitely making progress. Anyways, welcome to another episode of World of Warcraft Dungeon Overview, and the very first episode for Cataclysm. To start off this glorious group of instances, we'll be traversing through the Throne of Tides. I'll be guiding you through it with my paladin you see here, so with that being said, let's dive straight into it. Throughout our questing in Vashj'ir, that is if you actually went to Vashj'ir and didn't pick Mount Naz'jar, we've fought our way through countless Naga forces and discovered some of their ancient secrets. Unfortunately, some secrets are best left undiscovered, because we've not only had to face off against the Serpentine Marauders, but various minions of the old gods as well. We've come to find the horrific Faceless Ones have teamed up with the Naga forces in order to assault one of the four elemental lords, Neptulon, in an attempt to claim the realm of water as their own. Obviously, we can't allow Ashar's forces to wield such power, so we've come to the aid of the Earthen Ring in order to fend off our slithering foes. The Throne of Tides is a level 80 to 85 dungeon located in the northeastern corner of the Abyssal Depths subzone in Vashj'ir. It would be kind of useless to show you how to get here by foot, because, you know, we're underwater and everything. However, the questing experience for this zone is kind enough to give you a seahorse mount especially for such an occasion, so just make your way to the giant whirlpool and dive right in. From there you'll fall down into the cavern where the dungeon entrance is located. As for trash mobs, there are technically some scattered about, especially depending on which direction you're coming from, though you should be able to outrun them with ease. So overall, don't worry about anything and just keep swimming until you reach your destination. Lady Naz'jar is one of Queen Ashar's personal handmaidens, and one of the strongest commanders among the Naga forces. She's been crucial in their success here in Vashj'ir in retaking their ancient city from the Gavaldir, as well as forcing the Tidehunter back into his own domain. With everything else done and over with, all she needs is one more victory to forever ensure Ashar's dominance over the whole of Azeroth. For a fight with so few mechanics, a good amount of them are extremely lethal, so pay close attention to what I'm going to be telling you here. The first thing to look out for is that the boss will summon geysers to shoot up from the floor, knocking back and damaging players for a good amount of health. This is especially bad for casters if it were to interrupt your rotation, so pay close attention to your surroundings. Next up, Naz'jar will throw spores at random players' location, damaging anyone within range for a large nature DOT. Spread out in order to be sure that at worst you'll be the only one getting hit by these. The last thing to worry about for the first phase is called Shock Blast, which is basically Lightning Bolt on steroids. If Naz'jar manages to finish casting this spell, it'll pretty much kill anyone besides the most geared of tanks. Luckily, this can be interrupted. It's the only thing in this encounter that you'll need to interrupt, and it takes a while for her to cast, so you really don't have any excuses with this one. When the boss reaches 60 and 30% health, she'll begin to cast Water Spout, where she'll become invulnerable and deflect all spells cast at her, as well as summoning adds. First and foremost, stop casting any spells at the boss, otherwise you'll literally just be killing yourselves. You have more important things to worry about than an overglorified mirror for the time being. Water tornadoes will spawn and shoot out at random players, stunning them for 5 seconds and greatly damaging them if anyone is caught up in them. Be sure to stay spread out, like before, and avoid these vortices at all costs. This water spout phase will persist for 1 minute, or until all 3 adds that are summoned are defeated. I think you can figure out by this point that you'll want to kill the adds before the minute is up. The less time you have to worry about the vortices and additional damage, the better. My personal advice would be to wait for this phase to pop your cooldowns in order to burst through it as quickly as possible. Once that's done, the boss herself is considerably easier. While Naz'jar was sent into the Throne of Tides as commander of the Naga's forces, Ulthok was summoned by the old gods in order to direct the hordes of aberrations against the Elemental Lord. Not much is known about this ancient commander of the Black Empire besides his name, and that he's just as strong, if not stronger, than his Naga counterpart. One thing you'll notice throughout most of the dungeons from this point on is that the boss fights are going to be relatively simple in the amount of mechanics to worry about, but difficult in how to survive said mechanics. This fight is no exception. Ulthok will periodically grab a random player, stunning them for a few seconds and squeezing them for a large amount of damage. The healer of your group should focus this target for the time being, so as to not lose anyone early on. The boss will also place a curse on a random player that will need to be dispelled, so they don't lose their viability in whatever role they're playing for your group. Ulthok will occasionally enrage for a few seconds, drastically increasing his damage dealt for a short period. There's nothing you can do to avoid this, just be sure to pop your survival cooldowns if you're the tank so you don't get burst down. Finally, the ability you'll really have to look out for, Dark Fissure, will be placed on the ground in front of the boss periodically, which will damage all those nearby the impact, and standing in the pool, it leaves after the fact. The difficult part here is that on Heroic, the pool will spread out in size, making it harder to find room to stand. I'd recommend the healer ready their AoEs and the tank position and kite the boss to appropriate locations to avoid as much of the floor from being taken up as possible. Gersha is a squid-like minion of the old gods that specializes in taking over the mind of and enslaving its victims. Unfortunately, this creature managed to get its grubby little tentacles on the shaman Erunak Stonespeaker while he was trying to help us fight the Naga forces, meaning we now have to face one of our own. This fight is rather infamous for being such a pain in the ass that most groups used to opt out of attempting it back in the day. Unless there was a specific reason for killing this boss, most didn't even want to bother with the headaches it had caused. That is because there are two phases to this fight. The first phase where you have to fight Erunak, and the second where you have to fight the Mindbender after Erunak is brought below 50% health. The first phase is simple enough, and the only thing to note is that you should probably interrupt Lava Bolt in order to avoid a bit of extra incoming damage. Once Erunak is freed is when the real doozy begins. The simplest mechanic the Mindbender will do is that there will be a pool of fog on the ground, silencing and damaging any who are dumb enough to stand in it. Be very wary of what's going on in this fight, as Gersha will occasionally place up a shield called Absorb Magic, absorbing any spells cast on him and healing the boss for 3 times the amount it would have damaged him. If you don't want to die to the enrage timer, pay attention. This last bit is the reason most groups didn't even bother with the Mindbender back in the day. The boss will periodically jump onto the head of a random player and charm them for 30 seconds, or until they are brought below 50% health. In heroic mode, if the player is not freed from the mind control after 30 seconds, the boss will kill the player before leaving their head. The best thing to do for this fight is to quickly take down your party members' health just below 50% once they're enslaved, and be mindful of the boss's magic shield. Don't pop all of your cooldowns for this one, since it may make things 10 times worse if you accidentally heal him in the process. In the oldest legends and tall tales told by the saltiest of sailors, there have always been whispers of the terrible Kraken. None thought them to be true, until the Naga attacked the Alliance and Horde ships when first arriving to Vashj'ir's waters. Now, Ashara has pulled out all the stops and commanded the legendary father of all Kraken, Ozumat, to duke it out with the elemental Lord of Water in a battle for the ages. This fight has multiple stages, none of them truly being that difficult if I'm being honest. This fight begins when you talk to Neptulon and agree to defend him while he tries to cleanse the waters in the surrounding area. Trash mobs will begin spawning in and attempting to attack the Tidehunter for 60 seconds, and it's your job to foil their plans. After 60 seconds is up, Phase 2 starts, where 3 faceless sappers will spawn in and begin channeling spells at Neptulon. Other adds will spawn in as well, but you really only have to worry about the sappers. Once all 3 are defeated, the final phase will start. You'll gain Neptulon's blessing and grow to immense proportions, allowing you to take on Ozumat, who's clinging onto the walls of the room you're fighting in. This part of the fight is ridiculously easy, even on heroic mode, so once you've made it this far, you've more or less won. Just finish off the encounter and collect your loot for an easy victory. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and if you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, maybe even subscribe. Links to my social media and whatnot are in the description below, and as for the comment question, I'm not going to go with the obvious one here and talk about the ending to this dungeon and the scrapped raid that was never to be. Instead, I want to ask you what you think about the second boss, Ulthok. His full title is Commander Ulthok, the Festering Prince. If he's a prince to the Faceless Ones, does that mean that there is a king or queen out there somewhere? Do you think we'll ever get to fight against some uber form of these aberrations? Anyways, that's all the time I've got for today. I'll see you tomorrow for a special episode of Unanswered, so until then, don't die.